Welcome everyone to another enlightening episode of SecDevOps Unveiled. I'm your host, Vinod Kompishan, heading the Managed Security Services for Relevance. And today we are diving headfirst into a transformative concept that's reshaping the world of cybersecurity and software development, SecDevOps. In the fast-paced realm of technology, where the need of innovation and security collide, SecDevOps emerges as the beacon of change. It's not just a buzzword, it's a revolution that's redefining how we build, deploy, and secure digital solutions. Over the course of this podcast series, we are going to unravel the mysteries, myths, and marvels of SecDevOps. Whether you are a seasoned cybersecurity professional, a passionate developer, or someone just curious about this transformative concept, there is something there for you. I am in an age where cyber threats loom large. SecDevOps bridges the gap between security and development, ensuring that the applications and systems we rely on are not only innovative but also resilient against the ever evolving threat landscape. So, buckle up and get ready for a journey filled with expert insights, real world examples, and the latest trends that are shaping the world of SecDevOps. If you find our discussions informative, please subscribe and share this podcast with your colleagues, friends, and anyone who is passionate about the intersection of security and development. In our upcoming episodes, we will bring you conversations with industry leaders, SecDevOps practitioners, and visionaries who are driving this revolution forward. We'll explore the challenges, successes, and strategies that are transforming the tech world. Thank you for joining us on this journey to unveil the secrets and power of SecDevOps together. We will navigate the exciting landscape where innovation meets security head on. So, without further ado, let's kickstart this exploration of SecDevOps Unveiled. Let me give a quick intro about our guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are honored to have a distinguished guest who is a true trailblazer in the world of cybersecurity and SecDevOps. Allow me to introduce you to the remarkable Kunal Bhattacharya. Hi, Kunal.
Hey, hey Vinod, how are you?
I'm good, Kunal. Thank you. And Kunal is not just a security leader, he's a visionary who has dedicated his career to helping organizations build robust cyber defense and detection capabilities. He's a mentor and organizational leader and a driving force behind the adoption of secure software development lifecycle processes. With a wealth of experience in application development, systems, and database administration, Kunal brings a unique blend of technical prowess and strategic insight to the table. He is not just a security expert, he is a leader who forges lasting relationships with peers and key product and engineering stakeholders. Kunal's mission is clear to empower organizations to achieve their business and security goals. He does this by championing technical individuals, facilitating the adoption of cutting edge tooling, and promoting cybersecurity awareness to create rugged products. His expertise spans a wide spectrum from secure software development lifecycle and security strategy to coaching, team building, penetration testing, and risk management. Kunal is a DevSecOps advocate who understands the nuances of static and dynamic analysis and excels in the realm of cloud security. With such a rich background and a passion for aligning technology, security, and business objectives, we are in for an enlightening discussion today. Welcome to the podcast, Kunal.
Thanks for having
me. Yeah. And if I have missed any important points in your introduction, please feel free to add so that our audience get to know much more about you.
Thanks, Vinod, for that detailed introduction. I'm honored to be here, and just I'm very passionate about the subject of security and um, SecDevOps or DevSecOps. Some people use the term interchangeably, and I can also go into what I think which one should be used, and we can go into that as well.
Sure, definitely, yeah. Yeah. And let's dive right into our discussion and conversation, Kunal. So, as you said, the foundation of SecDevOps, we would like to hear from you how to use the term and why SecDevOps considered the foundational linchpin for modern software development, and how does it revolutionize the way we approach security?
Yeah, in the security industry, jargons are very common, right? And this was probably 12 years back, or maybe a little bit more, when I was trying to experiment with a bunch of different stuff. And one of the key basic things in application security world is basically you do the scanning and you find issues and you remediate it ideally, and then it goes to production. Now, the scale of the scan, the scale of the issues, that remains a challenge. It was a challenge 20 years back. It still remains a challenge. But what happened maybe 10 years back was there was a thought process to actually integrate that whole scanning into the product delivery lifecycle. And that's when I started experimenting with how do you do the integration before DevSecOps even became a term. Now, going back to the earlier point of DevSecOps and SecDevOps, organizations are going through a transformational change, depending on which organization where you are in the journey. The way I look at it, right, developers, the development organization drives the product, development, which is called by the product based on the features and whatever they want to launch. So the first in command is basically the product, and the second in command is the development team. Security is kind of a supporting function to development. If you look at it from that perspective, then you have development, and then you have operations, which is looking at regular cadence of delivery and release and all of that. So the idea initially was, okay, where does security fit into this? Because you have development who's developing stuff, you have operations, production support, and all those things. Security didn't even have a place. So the way I like to look at it is we kind of wiggled our way in the middle, and that's where the DevSecOps term started. Now, that is the phase one in my book. Now, if you look at much more mature organizations, to me, it makes sense to use the word SecDevOps because you understand the concept of security embedded into development. And the next step is basically where security is driving the development. So what that means is when the product is being envisioned, security is on the table along with development, trying to whiteboard the whole thing, seeing what the threats are, and suggesting ways to remediate those threats. So you're basically shifting left in the whole life cycle. And that's where I say SecDevOps, which is basically security driving the whole initiative.
So that's a very thought leadership content, Kunal. I have a couple of questions on those shift left strategy and integrating the security part of the SDLC. So I think I'll just ask those in the sequence so that our audience gets it. Can you elaborate on how SecDevOps seamlessly integrates security into the entire software development lifecycle, enhancing both development efficiency and security posture?
Yeah, SecDevOps, seamless is a loaded word, but the idea is with modern software development, there's a lot of pressure on organizations to actually deliver products and features at a faster pace, and keep on delivering it. I've worked with organizations who have been known to deliver newer versions on a daily basis, and sometimes multiple times a day as well. What ends up happening in this is if you're not able to deliver at that level, you're either left out from a business perspective because there's another competitor who is able to do it and you're out of business. But what ends up happening is you may end up cutting costs, and security or quality may end up seeming to be a nice to have than must have. In that world, this is where the automation world actually may help you deliver products with the basic principles of security built in. So you do all of the due diligence that is needed before launching a product, right from the initiation phase till development phase, testing phase, and finally onto the production, and also maintaining the status, because even if you go to production, you'll have newer versions coming up every time, and it's hard to do all of that without automation.
True, true. And this is another interesting topic you touched on, shift left strategy. So, what does shift left strategy mean in SecDevOps, and how does it proactively identify and address vulnerabilities earlier in the development process, thereby reducing security risks?
Yeah, so if you look at the organization maturity, right? If let's say you go to a use case where there's an organization who's delivering products, but they don't have a lot of security built into the product delivery lifecycle, or very minimal. What ends up happening is, let's say your product goes live and you have happy customers, and there is a vulnerability which pops up out in the wild, or it's found by some attacker. What ends up happening with that is you're in a reactive state, and you find out there's a issue or a bunch of issues that comes up, and when doing the due diligence on how to fix it, you figure out that, oh, you know what, we could have found this if we had done the security testing for it during, let's say, delivery phase, or during the scan phase itself, the development phase itself. So for example, if you're finding it at the end, which is after it goes live, that's the extreme right. If you're finding it during the delivery, from the code has been compiled and then being deployed, so that's a little bit to the left, and so on and so forth. If you're finding it while the code is being developed before the build process, then you're finding it even further left. And the best use case scenario is if you're finding it while it's being designed. So if there's a design flaw that happens before a single line of code has been written, if you find it at that time, you can say, hey, what about this? And you can fix it because the code hasn't been written yet. There was a Ponemon institute study that was conducted maybe a decade back, and I'm sure the numbers have updated. But the study said that if you're finding a vulnerability at the design phase, the cost of fixing that vulnerability is $70. And then if you keep going to the right, and you fix that vulnerability which was found actually in production, the cost of fixing that is $7,000. So you can, and the whole timeline is like 700, I think 1,200 or something, and then 7,000. So even from a monetary perspective, if you are able to truly shift left and find the issues earlier in the cycle, then your cost to fixing it also goes down.
Right, right. Kunal, actually, for security by design, now we have a number to map to. I think that's a great insight. Yeah, so thanks. And regarding the security tooling and technologies, Kunal, could you highlight the key security tools and technologies that organizations should consider integrating into their SecDevOps pipeline to bolster their security defenses?
Yeah, there is a lot of hygiene that is needed, but I would like to take a step back and actually give an example, which I think is on the outside side of it. It may seem like there is no relevance, but I'll quickly come to the relevance. So if people are following what's happening in the outside world in the space technology, India recently launched a rocket to the moon, and there have been other countries who have launched rockets maybe 3 decades back. But But for a country like India to launch it at a cost which is significantly lower and having achieved it is a great achievement in itself. Now, it's audacious to compare the product launch to a rocket launch, because we always keep hearing people saying that, oh, it's not rocket science. Why do people say that? Because rocket science is hard to comprehend, and it's not for the faint-hearted. Now, I wouldn't even dare try to compare saying that it's as complicated as rocket launch. But the analogy that I try to bring is because, like, if you're looking at the details of a rocket launch, there's like 5 different stages where you start from liftoff, and then you, jettison the payload and some other things. I'm not a rocket launch guy, but I would like to state that the product launch also has similar stages, and each stage needs to be looked at. And the due diligence done before the launch happens. Now, people can come back and say that, oh, but if you don't do the right math for the rocket can crash. Whereas for the software development lifecycle, you have agile and you can fix it. Yes, that's true on the exterior, but the problem is, or rather, with the rocket, you see that failing, you realize it, and then you work better. But with the software product launch, you don't actually see that happening right in front of you. It's like if you put a frog in boiling water, they don't slowly boil the water. They don't realize the water is getting boiled, and eventually they get cooked. But if you put it in directly boiled water, then they'll try to jump out. So it's like this that's happening, that with the product launch, you have these issues that you are not even aware of, that keeps on accumulating, and eventually the whole product can come down like a house of cards. So sorry for the long analogy, but this is basically to illustrate the point that there are different things that needs to happen at different phases, and you cannot ignore each of that if you want to have a successful product launch and have an iteration of it. So going back to your more specific question on different stages. So you have the threat modeling stage, which is the design phase, where you do as simple as doing a whiteboarding with putting the bare architecture of the product that's being envisioned, and the security architects can actually come in and give their insights on, try to think where the attacker had, and say that if an attacker were to attack, these are the gaps that exist in your proposed design, right? That's very manual, iterative process. There are some ways you can automate that, but that's mostly manual. Now you go on to the development phase. Now the development phase is a little more automatic. You can start off with the IDE part, where you're using, let's say, IntelliJ or Eclipse or, I don't know, Xcode. You can have plugins built. What it does is, when you're writing the code, you may be writing, putting a call to a third-party library, or you may be writing raw code itself. And the plugins come into play even before the compile happens. And let's say you're trying to import, I don't know, log4j 2.7 or whatever was vulnerable. It gives you an assist at that point in time saying that, hey, this library is vulnerable. Would you like to use a version 3 point something, which is not vulnerable? It's very hard for a developer to actually ignore it at that point in time. And there is really no reason to ignore it, because the code is being written, right? So that's the next step. The step after is basically when you have multiple people developing, and then finally you add the dependencies and make the build. You have the scan happening at that point in time. Like, you have technologies like Docker and container coming in as well. The scan engines are run there. So let's say you have minimized the path to the build, and you have, let's say, 2 or 3 different ways of you doing the build depending upon the team and depending upon the technology stack. The modern tools would support running the scans on those build itself, on the container images, the raw images, as well as the custom images as well, and find the issues that it will let you remediate at that point in time. The last step is basically when it's deployed, let's say to QA or test environment. at that point, you have another opportunity to actually run some dynamic scanning to say, hey, these are the issues that you may find, and another opportunity to remediate before you go to production. Another way to do it is also, in addition to the dynamic scanner, which is automated, is also doing a pen test, which is mostly manual, and then going to production. Now, I know a lot of this sounds like heavy lifting, but if you do that homework, then it pays off in the long run. But there is always a balance, so you can do some of it, and then um, depending upon the product pressure and all that. So
Perfect. Relating that rocket science is something that I would also use in my future discussions with my team. That's a wonderful example. Yeah. So, okay. The other one is on the culture transformation. For example, in the context of SecDevOps, how can organization initiate a culture shift that promotes security awareness and fosters collaboration between development and operations team?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, right? Because and it's actually very timely because we are in October, and October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Going to the awareness part, right? I think, like you said earlier, right, there's a transformational shift happening, right? Earlier, security used to mean securing the perimeter. It started off with as antivirus software and things like that, and it's gone way beyond that, right? But we had the 90s generation where we had system administrators who restricted access, and gave only required access. The basic concept remains the same, but the model of an admin who's controlling and not giving access doesn't work in the modern world, especially when it comes to the software development lifecycle. So in order to have a culture transformation, it's very important to identify the key stakeholders. In my view, the 4 key stakeholders are product, because you need to understand what the product is. The second is engineering, because they are the ones who's building the product. Third is the security, because you need to make sure the product is secure. And the fourth is the operations, because there may be issues that are found on the production side, which operation needs to deal with. So it's very important for security to have good relations with all these other 3 pillars and try to work towards the unified goal of a successful product launch, and not just launch, but maintenance of product, adding new features and all of that. So that's the culture change that's needed. The way I start about it is basically identify these 4 key stakeholders, and there could be multiple people within this 4 stakeholders. Like there may be multiple engineering teams, multiple operation teams, and things like that. But the crux of it remains the same, that any change that you're proposing, or any secure change that you're proposing, whether it's scanning or embedded in the pipeline, you would need the buy-in from all of these stakeholders and move forward with a positive mindset, rather than trying to push your way in and say, oh, we need to do this because security said so. And that does not fly in the modern world.
Correct. Very, very true. Yeah. So going forward with the continuous monitoring and compliance side of things, what practices and strategies enable organizations to sustain continuous security monitoring and compliance throughout the SecDevOps processes, ensuring the highest security standards?
Yeah, the first step is like we talked about, getting the stakeholder buy-in anytime you're doing it, because that achieves 2 things. One is the collaboration, which is extremely needed in the development lifecycle. Second thing is you're actually brought to the table when the product is being envisioned, which is a win-win scenario, because you would be able to do the threat modeling and find issues before, earlier in the cycle. So that's the 2 things. So, but that is not restricted to one-time product launch, right? Let's say you do all the hygiene work, you do the threat modeling, you do the scan, build in the scans during the whole pipeline. But there's always going to be iterations of the product. There's going to be new versions and new features and all of that. the scans will automatically happen. But when you talk about continuous security, keep in mind that the threats are also continuous. There's newer threats emerging all the time. So the security team, it's the Java security team to keep themselves up to date on the newer threats that happen and how it would potentially impact the product that is already there and new products that come up. Because if you don't do that, if you don't have a sense of the pulse, then one small thing can take you down. It's like a game between cops and robbers and all of that. So you cannot rest on the laurels. So it's continuous security is very important. The basic principles of zero trust, least privilege, you need to adhere to that.
True, very true. When you said about the zero trust, we have been hearing from customer asking for a zero trust product, and as it's a major philosophy than a product by itself. So I think that's another area that,
yeah, I think zero trust is also widely or not widely, but sometimes misunderstood as well, because a lot of times the endpoint folks talk about zero trust, but I apply that principle to product development, and also not just that, even in personal life. I tell my kids, zero trust, because it's not the most optimal word, and they talk about trust but verify. I actually go one level deeper to say do not trust and verify. So
okay, perfect. Yeah, I think that's something again. I think there's a lot of takeaways in today's podcast session, Kunal. Yeah, and measuring success. Okay, so it's about which metrics and KPIs should organizations actively track to gauge the effectiveness and progress of their SecDevOps initiatives.
yeah, there's a bunch of different metrics that organizations track. It really depends upon the maturity of where you are. When you're starting off something, or let me take that back. Even before starting off, right? One thing you want to do is basically make sure that you have visibility. The visibility is the key to everything, right? So everything is out in the open. And I know it sounds counterintuitive because when you talk about security, it's like, oh, we don't, you talk about least privilege, you don't want to give access. But what I'm talking about in terms of visibility is within the organization, within the stakeholders. And at the end of the day, it's all about risk acceptance, right? So there may be hundreds and thousands of risks. It depends upon an organization's appetite for how much risk they can take and willing to take. And when you define the metrics, it basically goes back to this core principle, right? So you can start off with any metrics, which is like, okay, how many high critical vulnerabilities are there in the product, and you can divide it by product lines and things like that, right? That's a base point that you have. Once you establish that, you can go into more of a trend level stuff, which is it's a given that there will be vulnerabilities. Nobody's saying that we have zero vulnerabilities in the product. And if somebody's claiming that, that's I would like to talk to them. But in reality, there's going to be vulnerabilities, and it's an ongoing thing. You have new products, you have new high critical vulnerabilities that keeps on coming up. But really, what matters is how reactive or proactive you are to finding and fixing those vulnerabilities. So one curve that is very popular within the industry is the rate of finding versus the rate of remediation. Now, if your rate of remediation is higher than the rate of finding, then you're on the right track and you're actually fixing issues faster than you're finding it, which is a good place to be. But that's easier said than done, right? The second thing that you can look at is from an organization perspective. You may have a large-scale organization which has multiple products, and if you're able to identify, let's say, the wall of shame, if that's a way to put it, right? So if you have, if you're pitching products against one another, and you can say that this product seems to have some challenges, when, let's say, going back to the previous metric, the rate of remediation is actually much lower, and people are finding more issues internally as well than that's being fixed. So there's a fundamental problem here for this product line. Maybe more investment needs to be made to actually get that remediation rate higher. So those product lines can actually have a organizational level goal to say 20% will be dedicated towards security, and that doesn't have to be permanent, but that can be temporary. So there are a bunch of different metrics depending on where you are in the journey.
Okay, got it. Kunal. So there are two important questions that came from the audience, to get insights from you. It's like integration of threat modeling. How can organizations effectively integrate threat modeling into their development process, creating a proactive security posture by identifying and mitigating security risks early? You already addressed that, but maybe a little more detailed.
When you're talking about integrating threat modeling, do you mean automated?
Yeah, automated.
Yeah, so this is something that I tried in a couple of different places. And the reason for doing that is, if we live in an ideal world, where everything is perfect, there's not even a single line of code that is written that is before doing the threat model. That's the ideal world. But the real world doesn't work like that, right? So there is going to be legacy code which has never gone through any of the security checks. There is going to be even new code being written because of multiple reasons which have not gone through threat model, whether it's timing or product pressure or business decision, whatever it might be. The idea for doing the threat modeling is not, it's about expectations, right? So you don't want, it's very hard to say that we'll be threat modeling, automating the threat modeling to find each and every small issue. But if you have a comprehensive threat library that is built in, and that can be built in over time, depending upon the investment that you make, what can happen is you can plug in the threat model automation into finding basic design issues. But this would be captured only after the code is written, because once you write the code, it is going through your GitHub or GitLab, whatever you're using as a CI/CD tool of choice, and automatically the threat model scans happen, which finds high-level issues and alerts the respective stakeholders. In some cases, it works out to, hey, this is a new product or new repo that's being created. We didn't even know about this. What is the product? And encourage those further discussions. So the idea here is not as a catch-all, but at least being able to catch the high-level issues, and then you can continue the discussions with all the best practices.
Yeah, perfect. And the second important question that people had is the SecDevOps in cloud-native environments. In the age of cloud-native solutions, what specific considerations organizations bear in mind to ensure robust security within their SecDevOps practices?
Yeah, with the cloud coming maybe 10 years back, right, when cloud was a thing, it continues to be a thing, but it was very transformational from a security perspective, amongst other industry perspective as well. The reason for that is, prior to cloud, it was pretty simple, right? You put in security best practices from a software. Let's look at it from a developer perspective. So developer is developing his or her code, and some other person in the team is developing, and then they they merge it, they deploy it, the QA team runs the test, and then it goes to production. The developer doesn't know much about it, and then the production support, they do their part, right? And this is being deployed into bare metal, which is essentially the data centers. You're protecting the physical data center, you're protecting the network and all of that. That was pretty easy. Now with the advent of cloud, things made it easy from a quick delivery perspective, because you can just spin up an AWS instance, you can spin up an S3 bucket, and just get your code out in like minutes, right? Which is good from a efficiency perspective, but what it created was an additional set of challenges wherein you have the VMs, you have this foray from physical assets to actually virtual assets. And these virtual assets are ephemeral. So it's there today, and then it does a Houdini act, and then it's gone tomorrow. How do you protect against that, right? And who is going to protect against that? Is that going to be the endpoint security folks? Or is that going to be the development engineers who's doing the development? So it's kind of a gray area, because now the development engineers, they need to up their skill to be looking at how it's being deployed, what are the configuration setting, and if the encryption is happening and things like that, right? So this actually forayed from being an application security perspective to a product security perspective, because if you look at a product perspective, it's end to end versus application, which is, what is an application? You can theoretically have an application inventory, but what is an application? Is it an API? Is it a combination of APIs? Is it a microservice, internal service? So those questions are hard, but you complicate that with containers, and you have virtual assets, so it becomes 10 times harder.
True. Actually, the ephemeral side of things that you said is a real case where today our security engineers are having a big challenge and finding the existing vulnerability that has impacted the organization, and then finding and fixing it. So yeah, great point.
Yeah, and to add on to that, right, just going into the development challenge as well, right? So there is 3 major cloud providers who claim to have it secure by the get-go, but still a lot of the security ownership lies within the organization, and when it goes to that model, it can become iffy about who owns the risk and what is the risk. So it's possible. I've seen scenarios where an organization thinks that it's owned by the CSPs, and CSPs may not own that risk. So yeah, it makes it difficult. And then you may be having multiple CSPs as well, depending upon the application, and which makes it even more complicated, because it's not easy to jump from one CSP to another. Yeah.
Well, the security is a shared responsibility when it comes to cloud. So that understanding is also limited with.
Well, it's true, but the problem with the shared responsibility model is, there is no clear owner.
Yeah, so very true. And it was a very interesting session. So looking at the time, I have one last question, and it's primarily like on the future trends in SecDevOps. Envisioning the future, how do you foresee the role of SecDevOps evolving, and what emerging trends should organizations be prepared for in the ever-evolving landscape of technology and security?
Yeah, I think it's an evolving thing for a long time, and we have seen, especially the product and application security space, not doing that kind of enhancement or advancement compared to the other security technologies, because of all the nuances. And I go back to the rocket launch analogy, all the nuances that go into building a product, including the non-technical ones as well, the business side of things as well, which make it a little bit complicated to get adoption in. But I think one of the few things that I'm excited about, which I think can actually leapfrog us into the next generation of SecDevOps, is basically the emergence of AI, right? And I know it's an overused term, but I do see the potential of actually having, building those large LLMs, which is based off on data that you've acquired over the period of time, which is scan data, which could be threat model data, pen test data, whatever it is. And then you're able to identify and build and protect against some of these threats, which may be very difficult to determine with the human eye, but you throw the computing power at it. That's going to be revolutionary. Another part which is not looked at right now much, but it's being explored mostly in research, is the quantum computing, which may leapfrog. But it's probably too early to be talking about that from a SecDevOps perspective.
Yeah, right. And you pitched on that AI part. Kunal, we are also having a webinar planned in the month of November, which speaks about AI dilemma, where the threat detection versus privacy protection. Because when we train the system for AI with large set of data sets, we also expose a lot of privileged information. So
yes,
that's something that we are planning a session, because that triggered a lot of interest based on one of the podcasts in the past. So,
yeah, that's everybody wants to talk about it or listen about it. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we are almost at the end of the session. So Kunal, so I'll just have a closing note, and and that brings us to the end of another enlightening episode of SecDevOps Unveiled. We hope you found today's discussion both insightful and thought provoking. A big thank you to our exceptional guest, Kunal, for sharing their profound insights and expertise in the world of SecDevOps. Your contributions have been invaluable, and we are truly grateful for your time and knowledge, Kunal.
Yeah, thanks Vinod for having me, and it was a great discussion indeed. Looking forward to more.
Yeah. And to our dedicated audience, your continued support inspires us to bring you these conversations. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share our podcast with your peers, colleagues, and friends who share your passion for their intersection of security and development. As we conclude, we invite you to stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we will continue our exploration of the dynamic landscape where innovation meets security head on. We have an exciting lineup of guests and topics that promise to ignite your curiosity. Remember, in the evolving world of DevOps, knowledge is power. Stay informed, stay secure, and keep unveiling the secrets of a secure, interconnected digital future. Until next time, take care and keep pioneering the world of SecDevOps. Thank you.
Thanks, Vinod.